Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we'll be discussing how C.M. Kosman, the author behind All Tomorrows, has single-handedly revived the sci-fi horror genre. All Tomorrows came out in 2008 and has flown under the radar for many years until recently, and it incorporates elements that challenges humanity's place in the universe by showing just how powerless we can be against extraterrestrial life. Kosman has had prior experience when writing about the speculative biology of species that had existed on Earth with All Yesterdays, in which Kosman sums up as, "We wanted to show dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals looking and acting like animals today. We knew that most such details were impossible to tell from the fossils alone, but what we could not deduce from bones, we speculated." Kosman has taken these ideas of speculative biology and has applied them onto our own species in a unique way that hasn't been done in other books. Unbeknownst to many, C.M. Kosman's unique writing has revived the sci-fi horror genre by offering a disturbing exploration of forced evolution through the genetic modification of the entire human race and inciting existential dread onto the reader. All Tomorrows is a book that would have anyone questioning their own place in the greater universe. For those unfamiliar with All Tomorrows, I will be giving a quick summary of the book. Humanity's want to escape the planet and colonize further out into space led to an adventure to colonize and terraform Mars. After the eventual colonization of Mars, it was left to be a backwater of humanity. After a few generations on Mars, the people had evolved to adapt the environment. The rapid advancements that the Mars colonists had made and the differences in their appearance with their evolution had disgruntled the people of Earth, leading to a 100-year war between the two planets, causing over 8 billion casualties. Eventually, the two worlds signed a treaty and helped each other into venturing out to further expand their colonies into space. And eventually, after a few millennia, the people had evolved into the Star People. The Star People were an evolved race of humanity which had been perfectly modified to travel intergalactically in space. Though humanity still faced the challenge of not having faster than light travel. The solution to this was to build automated ships that could terraform planets and construct inhabitants for those planets from stored genetic material. These automatic vessels would help colonize the extended branch of the Milky Way galaxy. Though, of the hundreds of planets that humanity had colonized, they had yet to find alien species that displayed higher intelligence. This all changed when one of the colonists had discovered the remains of a species on an alien planet whose bone structure resembled that of a Therizinosaurus skeleton. It was years later that humanity had encountered their first intelligent life and was disastrous. The first contact was bound to happen. The galaxy, let alone the universe, was simply too big for just a singular species to develop intelligence in. Any delay in contact only meant a heightening of the eventual cultural shock. In humanity's case, this culture shock meant the complete extinction of mankind, as it had come to be known. Almost a billion years old, the alien species known as the Q were galactic nomads traveling from one spiral arm to another in epoch-spanning migrations. During their travels, they constantly improved and changed themselves until they became the masters of genetic and nanotechnological manipulation. With this ability to control the material world, they assumed a religious self-imposed mission to remake the universe as they saw fit. Powerful as gods, the Q saw themselves as the divine harbingers of the future. This dogma was rooted in what had been a benevolent attempt to protect the race from its own power. However, blind, unquestioning obedience had made monsters of the Q. To them, humanity, with all its relative glories, was nothing more than a transmutable subject. Within less than 1,000 years, every human world was destroyed, depopulated, or worse. Changed. Despite the fervent rearmament, the colonies could achieve nothing against its billion-year-old foes, save for the few flashes of inferior resistance. Humanity, once the ruler of the stars, was now extinct. However, humans were not. The Q sought to punish the humans for their resistance against them. The worms. Distorted beyond recognition by genetic modification, these humans were turned into pale, overgrown worms. With tiny feet and hands modified for digging, their eyes were pinpricks and they lacked teeth, external ears, and the better half of the nervous system. The life of the worms was solely to dig aimlessly. If they encountered food, they devoured it. If they encountered others of their kind, they sometimes devoured them too. But mostly, they mated and multiplied, and managed to preserve a single shred of their humanity in their genes. In time, it would do them good. The Titans. More than 40 meters long, these behemoths were actually the transmuted offspring of the Star People. Several features betrayed their human ancestry. They still retained stubby thumbs on their elephantine front foot, not useless for any sort of precise manipulation except for uprooting trees. They compensated this loss by developing their lower lip into a muscular trunk-like organ that echoed the elephants of Earth's past. As bestial as they seem, the Titans were among the smartest of the reduced submen that remained in the galaxy. The hulking stance allowed for a developed brain and gradually sentience re-emerged. With their lip trunks, they fashioned ornate wood carvings, erected hangar-like dwellings, and even began a form of primitive agriculture. With settled life came the inevitable flood of language and literature, myths and legends of the bygone. Half-remembered pasts were told in booming voices across the vast plains. It was easy to see that within a few hundred years, humanity could start again with these titanic primitives. Sadly, a catastrophic ice age took over the Titans' homeworld. The gentle giants disappeared, never to return again. Predators and prey. Developed predators were common among humanity's fairer worlds. Most of the time, they resembled the vampires, werewolves, and the goblins of bygone lore, hunting equally subhuman prey with a combination of deprived weaponry. Some had enormous heads with large killing teeth. Others tore their victims apart with talon-like feet, but the most common kinds bore modified fingers and thumbs, bristling with razor-sharp claws. The most efficient of these predators lived on one of mankind's first off-world colonies. In addition to pad-like hands with switchblade thumbs, they had gaping, tooth-studded jaws on disproportionate heads with large, sensitive ears. All these served to make them the dominant predators of their home planet. They ran to the prairie, stalked the forest, and ranged through the mountains in the pursuit of different people, herbivorous salters with bird-like legs. While their prey lapsed into complete aminosity, the hunters managed to keep the spark of intelligence alive in their evolutionary honing. The Mantelopes. Not all developed people lapsed into complete bestiality. Some held on to their minds, while losing all their psychological advantages to the genetic meddling of the Q. A singular species was a prime exemplar. They had been bred as singers and memory retainers, acting like living recorders during the reign of the Q. When their masters left, they barely survived, reverting into a quadrupedal stance and occupying a niche as grazing herd animals. This change was so abrupt that the newly evolved Mantelopes endured only due to the forgiving sterility of their artificial biosphere. Fortunately, the selective forces of evolution made their agonies short-lived one. Simply put, a brain was not advantageous to develop if it could not be put to good use. A dim-witted, half-minded Mantelope grew up faster than the smart one and grazed just as efficiently. The Mantelope's animal children overtook them in less than 100,000 years, and their melancholic world fell silent for good. Nothing was sacred in the evolutionary process. The Swimmers. The Swimmers were a transmuted version of humanity, created to live in aquatic environments. Often kept as cute pets, once the Q had left, these swimmers were left to fend for themselves, and through natural selection, the swimmers became more streamlined to better catch prey, and they had begun evolving defensive countermeasures against predators such as armor, spikes, or poison. With their evolution on track, the swimmers drifted further and further away from their sentient ancestry. They would need a long time indeed to taste that blessing again. The Lizard Herders. The Lizard Herders were the luckiest of all of humanity, for the Q had merely erased their sentience and stunted the development of their brains. Resembling primitive forebears of Earth, the Lizard Herders were feral beings that had never evolved intelligence. In order to survive, these people formed a symbiosis with creatures that inhabited the planet, which are larvae herbivorous reptiles. With no intelligence, the only thing these people could do was rely on their lizard companions. The Colonials. The world had given the toughest resistance against the Q onslaught, so tough in fact, They had turned back two successful waves of invaders, only to succumb to the third. The Q, with their twisted sense of justice, wanted to make them pay. Even extinction would be too light of a punishment. For resisting the star gods. The humans of the rogue world needed a sentence that would remind them of their humiliation for generations to come. So they were made into disembodied cultures of skin and muscle, connected by a skimpy network of the most basic nerves. They were being employed as living filtering devices, subsisting on the waste products of the Q civilization like mats of cancer cells. And just to witness and suffer the wretched fate, their eyes, together with their consciousness, were retained. For 40 million years they suffered, generation after generation. They were born into the most miserable of lives while absorbing the pain of all that they were going through. When the Q left, they had hoped for a quick extinction, but their lowliness had also made them efficient survivors. Unchecked by the Q, the colonies spread across the planet in quilt-like fields of human flesh. After an eternity of tortured lives, the human fields tasted something that could almost be described as hope. The Flyers. The Flyers resembled bats or pterosaurs of the bygone past, dancing through the ether like angels. These flyers flew on wing membranes that stretched across the last two fingers. Their advantage was a unique turbine-like heart, artificially developed during the regime of the Q. No other human flyer in the galaxy had such an adaptation. The starfish-shaped organs sat at the middle of their chest, directly funneling oxygen from the lungs to the bloodstream in a supremely efficient way. This meant that the flyers could develop energy-consuming adaptations, such as large brains, without having to give up their power of flight. Though the possibility for sentience was there, the flyers would have to wait a bit longer to regain it. The Lopsiders. The Q were grotesquely creative in their redesign of human worlds. One group of misfortunate souls they transported to a planet with 36 times the amount of normal gravity and made them over for life in this bizarrely inhospitable realm. The result of these experiments resembled nightmare sketchings of Bosch, Dali, or Picasso. They looked like crippled squash between sheets of glass. 2 out of their form limbs had become paddle-like organs for crawling. Only one of their arms remained as a spindly tool of manipulation. The singular wizened limb also doubled as an extra sensor like the antennae of an insect. Their faces were different horrors altogether, all pretensions of symmetry, the hallmark of terrestrial animals from jawless fish onwards, were completely and utterly done away with. One bulging eye stared directly up while the other scanned ahead, in the direction of the creature's vertically opening jaws. The ears were likewise distorted. Monstrous as they looked, these X-Men thrived in their heavy gravity environment. Once again, there was an unusual explosion of species into every available niche, and the Lopsiders consolidated their chances for a renewed sentience. The Parasites. The Parasites had 2 varieties that had managed to cling on post-Q Empire. These parasites would cling onto their hosts with abdominal suckers, muscular, gripping limbs, and sterile pain-soothing saliva. But their success did not lie entirely in the strength of their parasitical advantages. They also learned to regulate their dumb hosts, not killing them by overinfestation and thus ensuing their own long-term survival as well. In any case, totally single-sided relations were rare in any ecology, natural or artificial. In millennial cycles, the cousin species' vicious parasitism began to give way into something more beneficial for both sides. Over millennia, many of these species had either been wiped out or evolved and had garnered sentience. Eventually, many of the species of human that had evolved into these creatures had made contact with other species harboring from humanity. Eventually, these species had created a galactic empire between themselves. During the formation of the Second Empire, many species of humans had come together to form an alliance within each other and protect themselves from the Q or any other hostile alien invasions. From there had been a rediscovery of Earth 1 billion years later, where these now transformed creatures of humanity had stepped foot back onto their old home, Earth. Cosman's ability to combine speculative biology and body horror with existential elements provides a unique take on the sci-fi horror genre. While sci-fi often explores aliens encounters, Ultramarines takes it a step further by delving into the consequences of these alien encounters. The speculative biology aspect with its vivid illustrations of humanity's grotesque transformations, adds a layer of realism to the narrative, leaving the reader with a nagging sense of anxiety when you think about the possibility of encountering such aliens like the Q. This feeling is known as existential dread, which the American Psychological Association describes it as a profound, deep-seated psychic or spiritual condition of insecurity or despair in relation to the human condition and the meaning of life. Many sci-fi horror books fail to target our own ideas of who we are meant to be in our vast universe. Another element that Kuzmin incorporates into his work, although not stated, is the idea of the Fermi paradox and the dark forest hypothesis. The Fermi paradox was created by a man named Enrico Fermi, which basically states that if an intelligent alien civilization had the resources and the drive to colonize the stars, they had millions of years before humanity to do so. So what Fermi immediately recognized was that aliens have had more than enough time to pepper the galaxy with their presence. But looking around, we don't see any clear indication that they're out and about. We don't see any obvious evidence of a galactic empire or united federation of planets. This prompted Fermi to ask, what was to him an obvious question: where is everyone? In a galaxy assumed to be filled with clever beings, why don't we see any? This dissonance is known as the Fermi paradox. This is where the dark forest hypothesis comes into play. What if the universe was the forest and humanity and every other technologically advanced civilization were the hunters? So posits the dark forest hypothesis, a solution of the Fermi paradox. The Earth has developed a civilization capable of interstellar communication. If we assume that the solar system is typical of the billions and billions of similar systems, then where is everyone? The universe should be teeming with intelligent life, leaving indelible marks on the systems which we should easily be able to detect. And yet, we see nothing. Kuzmin excels at incorporating these elements into Altomaros, not only by hinting at it as stated, others saw it differently. Pandavris has shown humans that entities powerful enough to visit Earth take animals from there and adapt them to an alien world. We're at large in the galaxy, considering the time gulf of the fossil itself. The mysterious beings were millennia older than human when they were capable of such things. Humanity's expansion into the stars had been a foolish move as they were announcing themselves to the Q. This can be paralleled with humanity's own goals to actively try and find extraterrestrial life. Though Kuzmin's interpretations of how aliens would interact with humanity leaves many readers pondering the possibility of hostile entities in space and how humanity has revealed itself in the dark forest. These elements included in Altomaros has hooked many readers and later listeners, as Kuzmin has worked with the YouTuber to publish an audiobook of Altomaros onto YouTube, which has led to millions flocking to the video, garnering over 14 million views. And having millions of search for Altomaros, and having garnered the attention of so many, Altomaros has gained the interest of many new individuals, leading to an explosion of searches for the book. Found interest in Altomaros has led to many individuals searching for similar books in the sci-fi horror genre, leading to a new era of interest in the genre.